There's just been an update for the Sunday night Mouse AVI mod, so I think this is a good time to go over some of the lore of this depressed version of Mickey Mouse, starting with the original and then covering different versions that have been created, such as the Vibing Leaps Mouse AVI Retake and various FNF versions. Now, Mouse AVI started out as a creepypasta and was supposed to be from an unreleased Mickey Mouse cartoon from the 1930s. The video showed Mickey walking down the street looking sad with creepy piano music playing in the background. A man named Leonard Maltin was reviewing this footage thinking that he would add it to a DVD collection for die-hard Mickey fans until seeing how poor the quality of the video was. He decided that he would just watch it and make a copy of it for the Disney's archives. Originally, he thought the film was only a minute and a half because it cut to black after that point, but he noticed that the film was actually over 9 minutes long. It seemed that the screen stayed black for about 5 minutes and then it showed Mickey walking again. But now there was no banging piano playing, but rather it sounded like somebody trying to scream, but they have a mouthful of water. So it was just a disturbing gurgling like sound. As this sound continued, the sidewalk that Mickey was walking on started to warp and a smile started to slowly creep onto his face. After another minute, the gurgling stopped and turned into a At this point, the buildings around Mickey start to look old and battered. His face literally starts to melt and his eyes actually roll out of his head. But that large smile gets even larger. And at this point, the sidewalk even starts to distort even more. Back in the real world, Leo is obviously creeped out and he left the room telling his assistants to finish watching this film. After another minute, the screaming finally stopped and an image of Mickey's face actually pops up on the screen. And this image remained for about 30 seconds. And then we see the assistant actually walked out of the room and told the security guard standing nearby that real suffering is not known. After repeating this phrase 7 times, the assistant grabs the guard's gun and takes himself out with it. We also learn that the last frame of the film has some Russian writing there, and it reads that the sight of hell brings its viewers back in. Now that we know the original lore, let's look at another version made by Vibing Leaf titled Mouse AVI Retake. This one starts with an old film of Mickey and Minnie playing around in the kitchen, but once Mickey pulls Minnie's nose, she seems to get really angry and slams a vase on his head, storming out. We then see Minnie finds another mouse, which from my knowledge isn't a named character, like for example Mr. Slickers, who we'll speak more about later. But whoever this mouse is, he snatches Mickey's girl and Mickey is forced to watch through a window and is completely devastated. And then, just like in the original, we see Mickey walking down the street, obviously distressed with the fact that his wife has left him. Now, a common theme for this part of Mickey's story is that he starts to take hard drugs in order to deal with the pain, which is why he has this empty look in his eyes. And in this universe, I believe Donald and Goofy are already dead, and Oswald is not a character that is actually in Mickey's life. To make matters worse, as Mickey is walking, a picture of a steamboat floats down into his hands, and it triggers a memory of another one of his friends named Gideon the Goat. This character is from Mickey's first cartoon titled Steamboat Willie. The memory starts with Mickey falling down the stairs and Gideon lifting him up, and they both look happy for a moment until they realize that nobody's actually steering this boat. And to make matters even worse, there's a sudden storm that hits. As they try to steer the ship back to safety, Gideon's actually blown off by that strong wind and is lost out to sea. Between this painful memory coming back, losing Minnie, and the drugs, Mickey actually reaches his breaking point. He gets a huge smile on his face and starts to laugh like a madman. Next, we see Mickey walking, and the area around him seems to be covered in flames and the wind that actually blew Gideon off the ship. And as Mickey is walking, he starts to talk to himself, saying, "What am I capable of? I failed my wife, I failed my best friend, I lost my best friend. What am I? This wind seems familiar. I am now stronger than the wind. I will show you all who I am." Next, we see that the town in the background is literally on fire. It seems that in Mickey's despair and insanity, he burns everything to the ground. And he's simply walking through the burning rubble, smiling. Next, we are greeted with what seems to be the face of a man, but in actuality, we are looking at the devil. The devil laughs at Mickey and then makes him start to fall into blackness, a literal descent into hell. And at the end of this descent, we see a rotating, eyeless version of Mickey floating until the screen turns white. And then we see Mickey in front of his old friend Gideon. Mickey smiles when he sees him, and for a moment it seems like Mickey has made it to heaven with his friend and has even managed to find peace. But then we cut back to reality and we see that Mickey is lying dead in front of the burning city. And just like in the original video, the end of the Vibing Leaf video has some Russian text, and by reading the comments, it seems that it says "Good night, friend." Now let's look at a couple of versions that were actually turned into FNF mods, starting with the Wednesday Infidelity mod. Now Mickey is depressed in this mod for very similar reasons to in the Vibing Leaf version, but instead of Minnie leaving Mickey for some random mouse, she leaves him for somebody named Slicker, or aka Mr. Slickers. And Mr. Slickers is a real character that used to appear back in the 1930s in old Mickey comic strips. He's usually portrayed as a taller, more handsome version of Mickey, and in this particular story, he basically steals Minnie and they run away together. And while that's obviously traumatizing for Mickey, that isn't the only thing in this version that makes him go insane. The next terrible thing that he had to face was losing 3 of his closest friends, that being Donald, Goofy, and Pluto. Donald and Goofy in this version actually get into a terrible car accident in which they both end up dying, and Pluto goes out one of two ways. Some say that he goes out by getting rabies, and the other one just says that he runs away with Minnie and Mr. Slickers. Now I want to point out that in this version, Oswald is his brother, and he actually tries to come and comfort Mickey, but he gives him some tough love. He basically tells him that he needs to get over all the trauma that he's been through, find a new wife, find new friends, and try to move on with his life. But Mickey is not in a state to handle that, and he ends up lashing out at his brother, and they have a falling out, never talking again. And all of this together is what actually gets him to start using drugs in order to numb the pain of losing everybody that he cared about in his life. Another major difference in the FNF version as well is that when Mickey is walking down the street, instead of just walking aimlessly, he actually runs into Boyfriend and they have a rap battle. But the mod doesn't end the way a lot of people think it does. It actually has 2 different endings. If you get what is considered to be the good ending, you'll be greeted with a scene where Mickey basically attempts to attack Boyfriend, but before he can do that, Minnie will appear and explain that she never actually loved Mr. Slickers and that Mickey didn't really see what he thought he saw, meaning that in actuality it was all just a misunderstanding. Mickey of course is overcome with joy now that he knows that he at least still has Minnie in his life, and he starts to regain his sanity and come back to his regular self. Now if you're like me, when you hear the good ending, you think that there's actually going to be a happy ending, but you are wrong just like I was. In the next scene, we see that Mickey literally explodes into a puddle of blood, and then he wakes up in a cave where he sees a little old man that actually turns out to be Satan. And it seems that Satan's whole goal here is to basically never let Mickey be happy again, and to keep him in hell where he can torture him for all eternity. And again, I remind you, this is supposed to be the happy ending. Now the second possible ending to this story has Mickey and Boyfriend having their rap battle, but Minnie doesn't actually show up this time. Mickey ends up pulling out a pistol and attempts to take himself out, but before he does, Boyfriend gets like sucked through a portal and ends up in hell. Next we see that Mickey is actually there too, but he seems to look completely normal, and he even helps Boyfriend up. But then we see Satan comes out and forces Boyfriend and Mickey to basically battle in hell for all eternity. In my opinion, both of those endings are terrible. Now the last version of Mouse AVI that I want to talk about is a bit different than the others, because as we see in this cutscene here, Mickey is actually working very hard so that he can give Minnie everything she wants in life. But Minnie isn't able to appreciate that at the time, and instead of being grateful, she actually ends up confronting Mickey about not spending more time with her. Now in actuality, the two probably should have just sat down and talked about the issues that they were having with their relationship, but Mickey was not having any of that. He wasn't able to rationalize with his wife, and instead he ends up lashing out at her. Mickey of course is upset because he feels like he's working himself to the bone for somebody that isn't grateful. And Minnie ends up leaving Mickey here because when they're arguing, Mickey actually ends up slapping her. Now Mickey does understand that what he did was wrong, and he stays up all night thinking about the mistake that he made. But this is also where it starts to get a little bit weird. Mickey starts to notice that he doesn't hear any of the normal sounds that he would normally be hearing during the day. Obviously it makes sense that the house would be quiet because nobody's there except him. But what's weird is that he doesn't hear any sounds like dogs barking, birds chirping, or even cars going by. It's completely silent. And this is when Mickey actually goes outside and starts to walk down the street. And this is where he realizes that he's just going in an endless loop, which of course is a throwback to the original creepypasta. Now the really messed up part about this loop is that he ends up walking this loop alone for 3 months, which is what actually leads him to go insane. And the only change that he ever gets is when Boyfriend actually accidentally stumbles into his universe. This is basically the first time in 3 months that Mickey has actually been able to communicate with somebody other than himself. But at this point, it's obviously already too late. Mickey is completely insane. And there is an interesting plot twist here that a lot of people didn't expect. The reason that Mickey is in this loop is because when he slapped Minnie, she actually didn't just leave peacefully. Minnie was so upset and disgusted with Mickey that she actually made a deal with the devil to curse Mickey's soul, and this is why he will forever be walking in this endless silent loop. These are some of the most interesting versions of Mouse AVI in my opinion. If you have some other ones, make sure to put them down in the comments. Make sure to watch this video on the screen next. Subscribe today to become a member of the Orseofkorse, and we'll see you next time with another video. Peace.